coming on the air with the big mystery everybody wants answers to, including the White House. Why did it take so long for tens of thousands of us to be able to make a call or send a text today? AT&T says service is back online now, but no word on what happened. We're live with the questions on accountability and the risk for emergency services after that stunning outage. Also new tonight, huge numbers on Wall Street, with one tech stock driving a record high. What it all has to do with the AI revolution. Then the shocking diagnosis for Wendy Williams, as we're learning she has the same form of dementia as Bruce Willis. Why her family says they're sharing this now to clear up the hurtful rumors about her health. Plus, vermin in Vegas, bed bugs apparently on the Strip, what the big-name hotels are saying tonight. And a groundbreaking moment in college sports. For the first time ever, players getting paid not for what they do in the game, but for what they do for gamers. One top QB telling our team the thrill is bigger than any check he can get. We'll explain a little bit later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight some major questions about this mystery that probably affected you or somebody you know. How did tens of thousands of people wake up today, not able to make a phone call or send a text, with cell service shut down for tens of thousands of AT&T customers? It happened all over the country. Look at the cities hit the hardest here. New York, Atlanta, Chicago, a couple of cities in Texas. You see it on the chart here, some of these big spikes throughout the day. It was really mostly in the morning, you see, from like 4 a.m. to noon, just about, people self-reporting these outages. Now, keep in mind, that's all we can confirm. These self-reports, those probably don't capture the whole picture, considering AT&T is the nation's biggest service provider. 241 million phones on its network. Millions of people may have lost service ultimately. Good news, however, as of right now, as of tonight, AT&T says service is back for everybody, and they're saying sorry to the customers affected. They say they're trying to take some steps to make sure this doesn't happen again. But this goes beyond AT&T. T-Mobile and Verizon customers also had some problems because they couldn't call people who have AT&T. And we're still not getting the answer to the big question here. How did this even happen in the first place? Even the White House wants to know.
The bottom line is we don't have all the answers to that. I mean, this just happened earlier today, and so we're working very hard to see if we can get to ground truth of exactly what happened.
Brian Chung is covering this one for us tonight. And listen, Brian, these days cell service is almost up there with like water and electricity in terms of infrastructure that people need. You had major issues throughout the day, especially when it came to emergency officials scrambling to try to calm folks down, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a critical utility that went down for a lot of Americans this morning. As you just mentioned, AT&T, a major provider of wireless services around this country. And this morning, AT&T users just simply weren't able to make calls on it. And that's the reason why there's so much broad scrutiny into what happened today. You just heard from John Kirby. And we did get a statement also from the Federal Communications Commission, which noted, quote, "We are aware of the reported wireless outages, and our Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau is actively investigating. We are in touch with AT&T and public safety authorities, including FirstNet, as well as other providers. FirstNet, by the way, the first responder network that AT&T runs, that also had issues today. And this is going even beyond the FCC. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency also taking a look into what happened today. They haven't specified a reason, but they said that they're aware of the reports and that they stand ready to offer any assistance needed as they try to work with AT&T to see what happened here. But this was a very serious issue. Yes, people couldn't make phone calls, small businesses were disrupted, but in some cases, emergency services were also affected as well. There were a number of authorities around the country, because this wasn't localized. This is a nationwide issue, in Dallas, in Prince William County, Virginia, Charlotte, Mecklenburg. I mean, these are just a few of the public agencies that said, look, 911 still works. You had some agencies saying if you couldn't access it through an AT&T mobile set, you would have to use a landline. And in one case, actually in Boston, the fire department was saying you don't even need to use a phone. Maybe you should use one of the 1,200 fire boxes around the city to access emergency services if you need it. So it's a really serious issue. Again, AT&T says that it's back online. The whole network is back online, but it doesn't change the fact that a lot of people who got that SOS in the corner of their iPhone, they were really confused about what happened. And quite frankly, in some cases, I'm sure, a little bit scared if they were in an emergency situation as well.
It's also mind-blowing to think you have this sort of emergency services saying, hey, use this 150-year-old technology, these fireboxes on the street if you need it. None of this, though, gets to the accountability factor here, because the bottom line is we still don't know what happened. There's a lot of pressure on AT&T to get some answers here. What are experts saying on this? Like, we know it's likely, based on the reporting here, not some sort of malicious incident. Is it just somebody hit the wrong button?
Yeah, well, NBC News tried to speak with some experts to see, okay, well, in the absence of AT&T offering any sort of explanation, which they haven't, by the way, what could have caused this? And one expert from Syracuse University, Lee McKnight, told us that it is possible, but far less likely that it's an intentional malicious hack of AT&T's network. He said that it's more likely some sort of cloud misconfiguration, which is basically a fancy term for saying a human error. That may have explained why, for example, it was only impacting AT&T. Yes, downdetector.com, which you mentioned, there are some nuances to the way that they calculate those numbers. It did reflect Verizon and T-Mobile having issues as well, but that's probably because AT&T customers were on the other end, or the receiving or calling end of the issues this morning. So A, this speaks to the fact that we still don't have an explanation for what happened here, but B, I think it also casts a lot of light on just how there's really only a few players in the telecom space. So many people use AT&T, so much so that it disrupted even people who don't have AT&T's ability to communicate with their loved ones, with their family, with their coworkers this morning in what was a very chaotic Thursday morning, Hallie.
Brian Chung, thank you so much. Chaotic, to say the least. Thank you. More to come on this one. Tonight, out west now, we're seeing the dramatic and chaotic moments after a deadly shooting on the set of the movie Rust, with prosecutors playing those clips in court today. Watch.
Okay, leave him right there. Leave him right there, okay? Relax.
So in that first clip, you heard the movie's director yelling in pain. He also was shot that day. Afterwards, you see Hannah Gutierrez-Reed sobbing, trying to tell police what happened. This is her in court here. She was the armorer on set. She loaded the gun that went off in Alec Baldwin's hand in October 2021. All of this, events that led to the death of Helena Hutchins, the movie's cinematographer. Prosecutors arguing it all happened because Gutierrez-Reed was unprofessional, they say, and sloppy on the job. Here's how they wrapped up their opening arguments today.
This is a statement that Ms. Gutierrez made when she was being interviewed on the day of the shooting. She says at the end, I don't know. I wish I would have checked it more. And so do we.
I wish I would have checked it more. That statement there. Now, Gutierrez-Reed's lawyer says the state is basically making her a scapegoat. They're saying they're pointing to her as the least powerful person on set, trying to make an example of her. She faces charges of involuntary manslaughter and tampering with evidence. She's pleading not guilty. Baldwin is also facing a charge of involuntary manslaughter. He has pleaded not guilty and will go to trial later this year. Dana Griffin is following it all live for us from Santa Fe tonight. And let's start with the prosecution here, because there's a couple of key questions that they want to be answering for the jury. Talk us through it.
Exactly, and they plan to do that, Hallie, by a series of testimony, evidence, and other things that they plan to present during this two-week trial. Two of those questions they want to answer are, what are the events that happened on set that led to the death of Helena Hutchins? Also, how did live ammunition end up on the set of the film? And prosecutors believe it was the negligent act of the defendant, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, that led to, one, the cinematographer's death, and also led to the ammo ending up on that set. They also say that live rounds were found on the set days before the shooting, and they showed some pictures. One shows a box of the rounds, and they say that there's a silver primer on that box that shows that that was a live round. They say dummy rounds have brass primers. They also showed Gutierrez-Reed with what they say is a live round sitting in her lap on the set. And they say that two of the cast members also held live rounds in their belts. Hallie?
So that's sort of the prosecution piece of this. What about the defense side of it? We said in the introduction that they are essentially trying to put more of the blame on Alec Baldwin, who, as we said, goes to trial later on this year. Talk us through that piece of it.
Exactly. So they are pointing the finger at Alec Baldwin. They say he is the man that pulled the trigger, and he didn't need the gun in his hand during that particular time of the scene because they were doing what is called blocking. And they said he could have used anything else but had that gun in his hand. Listen to what the defense said.
Ms. Gutierrez-Reed, you're not going to hear anything about her being in that church or firing that weapon. That was Alec Baldwin. Rule number one, never point a firearm at somebody unless you intend to shoot them. And that rule was broken.
They said that rule was broken, so they plan to point the blame on him. They also say there was another person on set, one of the crew members, who after the shooting disposed of the rounds that were inside that prop gun. They say investigators, Hallie, never found those rounds, so that'll be a key point if they can prove that during this trial. I also want to point out some other key points that they mentioned during this, during their opening statements. They say that OSHA completed this report and found numerous faults with production, not the defendant. And they also said that, again, those dummy rounds, not all of them have brass primers. So hopefully we'll hear from some experts who can corroborate that. Hallie?
Dana Griffin live for us there outside court in Santa Fe. Dana, thank you so much. In just the last few hours, we've seen President Biden sitting down with the wife and daughter of Alexei Navalny, who was, up until his sudden death last week in a Russian Arctic prison, the top opposition leader fighting Vladimir Putin. You are seeing some of the photos here that the White House has released of the president and the family. Watch.
It's amazing how his wife and daughter are emulating that.
Navalny, it's tough to hear what the president says, but he talks about now how Navalny's wife and daughter are emulating his work. Remember, that's after Yulia Navalny said just a few days ago she would try to continue the life's work of her husband and get to the bottom of his mysterious death. World leaders blaming Putin for his death, although Russia says that Navalny collapsed and died suddenly while on a walk, while imprisoned. The meeting comes as the president's getting ready to roll out what the White House says will be a new and major set of sanctions against Putin and Russia in response to what happened to Navalny. I want to get to Mike Memoli, who's with the president in San Francisco. And here we have, I think it was unexpected, right, this meeting between the leader of the free world, right, the commander-in-chief, Joe Biden, and the wife and daughter of Alexei Navalny. It is a very clear and very direct message to Russia.
Yeah, absolutely, Hallie. I mean, we talk about the president over the last few weeks really speaking in very strong terms about the need for the United States to continue to support Ukraine in their battle against Russia, the need to support at a time when his likely presidential opponent this year, Donald Trump, has been casting doubt upon the NATO alliance. But there's the power of the words, there's the power of the actions that the president will begin rolling out tomorrow in terms of new sanctions. But then there's the power of this symbolism. As you see it, the president literally embracing Navalny's widow here in what was a very unexpected development. This was a trip to the West Coast, which, as they often are for Democratic presidents, about fundraising primarily. The president only had a couple of fundraisers on the schedule here in San Francisco. It was just moments after our colleague Andrea Mitchell first broke the news about this meeting potentially taking place that the White House revealed that it had actually happened already. And so in addition to these images that we're seeing of the president sitting down with Yulia Navalnaya, as well as Dasha, their daughter, who attends Stanford University here in the Bay Area, we got a readout of that meeting in which the president does speak to the courage of Alexei Navalny and the way in which you played that sound from the president, that he was that his extraordinary courage and his legacy of fighting corruption and the ways in which Yulia Navalnaya has now picked up on that. So now we look ahead to that symbolism translating into action. What is the president going to be announcing tomorrow? He, interestingly, in those brief comments to the pool here in San Francisco, talked about sanctioning Putin directly, which would be notable. We don't know if he was speaking just generally about sanctioning Russia or Putin, if that's going to be part of the sanctions. All we've heard really so far from Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, and others, is that these sanctions will be powerful, which will take action against Russia's defense industrial base and the ways in which it has been able to continue to generate income to fund its war machine, as Jake Sullivan put it earlier this week. And so, Hallie, I have to say, in these fundraisers, as the president has been holding them here on the West Coast, we often get much more candid insight into his thinking. And it has been very clear that in his re-election year, foreign policy continues to be very front of mind. This is something that he has been bringing up over and over again, even last night at a fundraiser which was supposed to be focused on our environmental issues. And so the president, who has spent decades engaged in foreign policy, continuing to really keep that front and center here in his re-election fight as well.
Yeah, clearly feeling comfortable with that territory. Mike Memoli live for us, traveling with the president out west. Mem, thank you. To Wall Street now, and big news with the markets electrified tonight. Records being shattered all over the place. Look at this. The Dow passing 39,000 for the first time ever. The S&P closing at another record high. The NASDAQ up almost 3%. Why? What's happening? This is mostly driven by that gangbusters earnings report from a company called NVIDIA. We told you about it last night. NVIDIA came out after the closing bell and said its revenue nearly tripled from last year. It's all driven by this booming AI business from NVIDIA. Caleb Silver is joining us now. Like, people who care about business are looking at NVIDIA going, holy smokes, and the markets are reacting here.
Yeah, investors are so bullish, and they're so bullish on AI and AI-related stocks. NVIDIA, the poster child of that, of course, growing revenue, tripling revenue, and really bringing home a huge profit. But these big stocks like NVIDIA, like Meta, like Amazon and Microsoft, driving the market to new highs after new highs. We've had 12 so far this year, Hallie. We're on pace to shatter the 2021 record of 70 if we keep going like this.
Explain the sort of fallout from this, right? Because we all know that the market is not the economy. That's what we say a lot, but the market can be an indicator of how the economy is doing. Is there any real world impact for like an average Joe who like doesn't hold NVIDIA stock, but maybe does have a 401k?
Yeah, well, I think most people do own NVIDIA stock through their 401ks. It's one of the most popular, most widely held stocks on the planet, along with Microsoft, Apple, and Meta, and others. And it's these stocks that continue to drive the market to new highs. Now, 60% of U.S. Americans have investments in the stock market. A lot of people have 401ks. So there's a wealth effect to the stock market making new all-time highs day after day, which is what we've seen really over the last several weeks. People feel that. They feel better looking at their 401ks, but there's also the better wealth effect where companies now feel healthier, wealthier, may hire more people, may expand more. So it does have a ripple effect throughout the economy, but the stock market always way ahead of the economy, too.
Caleb Silver, appreciate that breakdown. We're watching, obviously, what the market's going to do tomorrow, too. We've got to get to some breaking news just into us in the last couple of minutes. The FBI informant charged with lying about President Biden and his son Hunter has just been arrested a second time. We're talking about Alexander Smirnov. This comes just days after his first court appearance in Las Vegas. Tom Winter is joining us now. Why, Tom? Why did this happen? Why was he rearrested?
It's a good question, and it's one his attorneys apparently want to know, Hallie. Earlier today at his law offices, the law office of his attorneys, I should say, in Las Vegas, Nevada, apparently agents showed up with a valid arrest warrant out of the Central District of California and took him into custody. But according to his attorneys, it was for the same exact indictment and the same exact charges that he had been previously hit with. I am checking literally as I'm speaking to you, hitting the buttons on my tablet, and there is no filing in the California case. You might remember, Hallie, that prosecutors, once they were denied the motion to keep him detained pending trial, went to the judge, the trial judge, who will ultimately oversee this, the district judge in California, saying, hey, we'd really love it if you could reconsider this and overrule the magistrate judge and keep him held behind bars or in custody pending his case before your court. And they provided all sorts of pieces of evidence that they had previously gave to the judge in Nevada. Now his attorneys, we didn't get this notification from prosecutors or the FBI, but his attorneys say he was arrested there this morning and is now in federal custody, and they would like to know why. And there is no indication on the docket that the judge has granted some sort of emergency motion to remand him, basically to pull him off the streets because he's violated his agreement. So a bit of a mystery at this point, Hallie, but what we do know, at least according to his own attorneys, that Alexander Smirnov is back in federal custody.
Tom Winter, lots to follow on that one. Keep us posted. We'll come back to you for any updates as you get them. Appreciate it. To national fallout tonight from that unprecedented and controversial court ruling in Alabama that says frozen embryos should be considered children. With President Biden late today speaking out against it, saying, make no mistake, this is a direct result of the overturning of Roe versus Wade. You see that statement from the president there. So the confusion and concern now, what this means for IVF patients, not just in Alabama, where multiple healthcare facilities have put IVF procedures on pause, but beyond Alabama's borders. Look at Florida. There's a bill working its way through the state house there that would let parents sue for the wrongful death of an unborn child, with critics raising some similar questions about what that means for clinics who do in vitro fertilization. And those kinds of procedures, very broadly supported by almost everybody, by 85% of all registered voters, by nearly 80% of voters who describe themselves as pro-life, by more than 80% of evangelicals. This is according to an October survey from a group that does polls for the healthcare industry. You can see it here, right? Support for IVF cuts across political lines, which is why this whole Alabama situation has become politically perilous for some Republicans. But Democrats, including Vice President Harris, today pointing that out.
On the one hand, the proponents are saying that An individual doesn't have a right to end an unwanted pregnancy. And on the other hand, the individual does not have a right to start a family.
Laura Jarrett is joining us now. So it is politically thorny. It is legally thorny for patients. They have a lot of questions here, as we're now seeing today a second clinic in Alabama say, wait a second, time out. We're going to pause IVF procedures, too. Some are still operating. So not just in Alabama, but across the country, how are people supposed to be thinking about this and what comes next?
It's sort of this bizarre patchwork, if you will, Hallie, at this point. I spoke to two women today who, going into this week, weren't really sure what was going to happen, obviously hoping for the best, but now receiving the news of the worst, which is their clinics are going to shut down all IVF. In one case, the woman has been on multiple rounds of hormone injections for weeks now. She is packing her bags tonight, Hallie, jumping on a plane to Texas, going to another state, because she's saying, look, I've been at this for so long, so much time and expense, it's not worth it trying to restart and just waiting for the uncertainty. Another woman in Alabama, Hallie, telling me she can't even get her frozen embryos out of the state. She can't even pick up and take them to New York, California, Chicago. She can't do that because Alabama is saying we are shutting down everything. We're not going to even allow you to take your frozen embryos, which the state has now said are your children, out of the state.
And that is because these healthcare facilities, right? It's not the state that's saying that. It's these facilities that are looking at this new ruling now saying, wait a second, we don't want to get sued. It seems like the concern is less about getting prosecuted, more about facing huge civil penalties here. But explain that, right? Because who would have standing to file such a lawsuit if not the patient who is seeking the IVF in the first place?
It's a great question, because remember how this starts. It's a couple that's going through IVF and is devastated because their embryos were destroyed in the lab. And so they sued for wrongful death, trying to get money damages, and the state said, you can do that. The Alabama Supreme Court said, you have standing as the parents of those embryos. And so the parents are the ones who only have standing. It's not just anybody off the street. Not just anybody can sue. The parents are the only ones who would be able to sue for wrongful death. But the clinics are saying, we don't want to get sued because what if there's another accident? What if somebody slips and falls as the embryo is about to be implanted? And so they're so worried. What if there's a disaster with the thaw? There's too many different possibilities, which has put them on the hook legally now because of this decision, Hallie.
Is it appealable? In other words, is it possible we could see the Supreme Court take something like this up?
No, this is a state court, the highest state court, looking at state law. You could try to ask them to reconsider it, but it seems unlikely that they would change their ruling. Really, the only thing right now is new legislation in that state. And there's certainly a fair amount of pressure on lawmakers now, especially from the women I've heard from who are just really devastated. Again, doing multiple rounds of this for years, multiple rounds of expense, literally left with no answers and cannot get their embryos out of the state.
But it's that exact issue, Laura, that brings us to the sort of area that I cover, which is the political nexus to this. And there is one, right? We've heard from a number of top Republicans, for example, who are being asked about this, who are being pressed about this, including obviously Nikki Haley, as we talked about yesterday, who says she believes embryos are children, but also seems to be walking back a little bit her support for this Alabama court case. I think about Mike Pence a couple of years ago coming out and talking about this, saying he supported protections under the law for fertility treatment. Let me play that.
I fully support fertility treatments, and I think they deserve the protection of the law.
So you have this moment now where the state of Alabama is to the right of Mike Pence when it comes to this issue, as it is exploding onto the national stage in a big way just months before the presidential election.
Yeah, to have this happen in the middle of an election year when people are already sort of mobilized and riled up about abortion, and this is different than abortion. This is people who want to be pregnant desperately and who are very angry at lawmakers for taking that away from them. I mean, this crosses all of the political aisles. As the polls that you showed, people are overwhelmingly in favor of in vitro fertilization, other fertility treatments. And again, the laws that say life begins at the moment of fertilization, that's sort of where the rubber meets the road then, because if life begins at the moment of fertilization, a fertilized embryo, even if it's only been sort of dividing for 5 days, has the same rights as a baby.
Laura Jarrett, we're glad to have you covering this story. There is a lot to follow here. Thanks for doing it. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
Also tonight, a new court ruling on a case over whether a black student can be denied his schooling because of how he wears his hair. With the judge ruling down in Texas that a high school there is within its right for suspending Daryl George over the length of his dreadlocks. The decision is a huge development in this ongoing fight between George, you see him there, an 18-year-old junior at Barbers Hill High School, between him and his school district. He's been on in-school suspension or else in an off-site disciplinary program for most of the whole school year already, since school officials said the way he wears his hair violates their rules. George and his family have said, we are not cutting his hair. Here he is outside court.
It's put a lot of emotions on me, you know, anger, sadness, you know, disappointment. It just makes me feel angry, very angry that, you know, throughout all these years, throughout all the fighting for the Black history that we've already done, we still have to do this again and again and again.
Remember, this all has to do with the Crown Act, which bans race-based hair discrimination at offices, schools, other places in Texas. I want to get to Morgan Chesky, who is live for us in Texas. This is a ruling that a lot of people were watching because of the implications about what happens, right? The student not able to go to school because of the way that he wears his hair, and the judge is ruling now for the district. Why?
Yeah, Hallie, I want to share with you exactly what that judge said in this ruling that took place just a few hours ago, saying in part that this district policy does not prohibit nor does it discriminate against male students who wear braids, locks, or twists. Those are the words of the state district judge Chapkane III. And Hallie, this policy that had been in place by the school in the student handbook stated that the hair could not come past a student's earlobes or their eyebrows. And an important distinction here is that the family of George says that the way he wears his hair, those locks, those braids, it's always up. He never lets them down. The district's essentially saying that that doesn't matter. If he were to let it down, the hair would then be in violation of their code of conduct in the student handbook. And that is why for the last several months he has been in an alternative school of sorts, unable to sit with fellow students. His mother saying that his grades have been slipping as a result of that and that he's felt lonely. The remarks that we heard from that 18-year-old high school junior were actually given before this ruling, after both he and his mother, too emotionally distraught to even address cameras. Hallie?
What does this mean for the future of this Crown Act, which again was put in place to ban essentially race-based discrimination based on hair?
Right. Texas enacted this back in September 2023. We know that at least 20 other states have similar policies on the books. We had a chance to actually hear from one of the authors of the Texas Crown Act, and here's what he had to say following this judge's ruling today. Take a listen.
It's a pattern and a practice that is continued. And we thought, in good faith, we truly believed that we passed the Texas Crown Act, that it would stop. And it continued. So it showed that they really were hell-bent on just continuing the discrimination.
So where do things go from here? Well, the George family has said through their attorney that they do plan to appeal this in court. We'll be watching to see when the next court date is there. Meanwhile, the authors of the Texas Crown Act say that they might go back to the drawing board, Hallie, and have a more explicit version of this go into place so that hair length is specifically covered, so that cases like George doesn't end up in a courtroom as it is right now. Hallie?
Morgan Chesky live for us there in Texas with that big story in your state. Morgan, thank you. We got a lot more to get to here on the show, including in just about an hour from now, a moon landing that could make history. We'll talk about why it's so significant and how it could set the groundwork for an even bigger mission. We're going to have that live in a little bit. Plus, is panda diplomacy back? It's pandemonium at the zoo. Stay with us. So in just about 1 hour from now, in outer space, we're expecting to see a moon landing that could make history with the first American spacecraft to land on the moon in more than 50 years, since the Apollo era in 1972. I want to show you NASA TV. This is a live look. This is like their pregame coverage, if you will, their big tee up to the big moment in 60 minutes from now, when they're going to put something on the moon's south pole, a lunar lander, part of a bigger mission to try to send astronauts to the moon in the next couple years, and to set up basically a gas station for rockets, kind of, for them to refuel as the U.S. looks to build up its presence on the moon. Marissa Parra is live for us outside as we are looking and waiting for this big moment. Marissa, explain why it's so significant here, especially as we're starting to see a sort of new space race between the U.S. and China.
Yes, and there's a lot of elements to this space race. In terms of why this is important, first, you mentioned the historic nature of it. This would be the first U.S. moon landing of any kind in over 50 years. You mentioned Apollo 17. That was also the last time we had astronauts on the moon. But this is also, if successful, this would be the first time a private company lands on the moon. And it's worth noting this is a totally different company than the one that attempted this exact same kind of lunar landing about a month ago. That was a crash and burn scenario, ended up crashing and burning back here on Earth. So this is called Odysseus. It's about 14 feet tall. It was built by a company called Intuitive Machines. It's part of a $118 million contract with NASA. They have really powerful cameras that are on board. And so one of those cameras is actually going to be recording the landing that's supposed to happen. It's also going to, of course, provide some really key, crucial images. But one of the most important parts of this, Hallie, you just mentioned this idea of a gas station. So the lunar landings zone where it's supposed to land is the most important part of this. So it's aiming for the South Pole. And this is a key area of interest because this is where there's ice water that is completely untapped in those deep craters there. And this is a key area of interest between scientists, astronauts, because the idea is there's a thought and a hope that that ice water can be tapped into and somehow refined and able to be used and turned into rocket fuel. So this would allow missions to sort of use it as a gas station, as you mentioned, and get to other places within our solar system like Mars. So when we talk about the space race, this is not only, of course, the race to the moon. We're trying to bring humans back to the moon sometime in the next few years. They're aiming for the end of next year. We'll see, because that keeps getting pushed back, but also the race to Mars. So, Hallie, we'll see how this page of the journey of the space race ends. We'll see within the next hour. And luckily for us, you have a 2-hour show, so we'll be right back here in about an hour to let you know how that goes.
Girlfriend, do not go anywhere. We're going to need you as we watch this potentially historic moment happen. Marissa Parra, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, a new round of tensions in and around the Red Sea today with Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen saying they set a cargo ship on fire. The ship was still able to sail, but it comes as the U.S. military says it shot down 6 Houthi drones this morning. The Houthis say what they're doing is part of a bigger campaign to try to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Number 2, Yale is bringing back standardized testing requirements for students who are applying. A test-optional policy originally related to COVID was in place for 4 years, but now if you're applying for the fall 2025 semester, so this coming semester, you've got to submit either an SAT or an ACT score or AP or IB scores. The school's admissions dean says the scores give them a better sense of whether students are ready for Yale's academic rigor. But again, Yale now just adding to the list of schools doing a 180 on standardized tests. Number 3, some of the richest people in the country are evading more than $150 billion a year in taxes, according to the head of the IRS. So if you're getting your taxes ready, paying a bill, just think about that. In an exclusive interview with CNBC, the agency chief said a lack of funds, so not enough money or resources, made it harder to audit filings that are more complex. But with a round of new funding, they plan to crack down regardless of how much somebody's supposed to pay. Number 4, it's time to play ball spring training style. Major League Baseball's preseason games are now happening in Arizona. The LA Dodgers facing the San Diego Padres in the first matchup. Baseball's back. All 30 teams going to be in action this weekend. LA and San Diego are also going to open up regular season play in April, too. That's in less than a month in South Korea. Number 5, Guinness World Records has officially stripped Bobby of his title as the world's oldest dog. The pup from Portugal was reported to be 31 years old when he died in October. But a bunch of vets and some other experts started getting suspicious. After an investigation, Guinness found no conclusive evidence to prove Bobby's real age. But you know what? He is still a record holder in his owner's heart. How about that? Speaking of animals, panda diplomacy may be back in a big way because we're just learning late today that China's planning to send a new pair of giant pandas to a zoo in San Diego sometime this year. Remember, that's only a few months after some of the last pandas in the country, the ones at the National Zoo in D.C., were sent back to China. In that very depressing video that you're watching here, and there are some real geopolitical implications to this. Because remember, the relationship between the U.S. and China is at a low point over trade and technology, the wars in the Middle East and Ukraine. Let's bring in Ali Rafa, who's posted up near the White House. Okay, fine. at least a couple of pandas coming back, and we're hearing there may be more talks to get the pandas back at the National Zoo here in Washington. It's not just about people loving going out and seeing the pandas chomping on their bamboo and like rolling through the snow. There are diplomatic pieces to this puzzle too, right?
Absolutely. This move is really representative of something much bigger, because we know that this is a major reversal after we saw China late last year pull their more than 50-year-old program of loaning pandas to the United States amid a deterioration of ties between the U.S. and China. And you think of how low relations between the two countries have been over the last few years, over disagreements over the shooting down of the Chinese spy balloon last year, disagreements over Taiwan's right to independence. Remember, the United States has committed to defend and protect Taiwan from Chinese aggression. China says that Taiwan is its territory. You think of the U.S. disagreements with China over buying Iranian oil, supporting Russia, and providing trade to Russia amid its invasion of Ukraine. And so all of those disagreements were really the backdrop for what we saw become a major high-stakes summit between President Biden and Chinese President Xi last November in California, where officials really tamped down expectations. They said this was going to be the first time these two leaders had spoken in over a year. We shouldn't expect any major developments to come out of this meeting. But one piece of news that really shocked the world was when Chinese President Xi actually said he'd be open to potentially restarting this Panda diplomacy program, a senior administration official at the time calling it a goodwill gesture, because we know when this began in 1972 with the first pair of pandas going to the National Zoo in D.C., it was really a symbolism of friendship and relations between the two countries. China loaning those pair of pandas around $1 million per pair per year, and that has helped to take these pandas off of the endangered species list, according to experts. So China, as we know, as you mentioned, has now reached agreements to provide these pandas to zoos in not only San Diego, but also Madrid. And we know those talks are continuing to potentially provide pandas to the National Zoo again here in Washington, D.C., as well as a zoo in Vienna. Conversations, though, on the timing of when we could potentially see that decision made, still unclear. We still haven't even heard U.S. officials respond to this news, but there's certainly hopes that this could lead to a benefit or a resurgence of relations between the U.S. and China, better than what we have now, Hallie.
Yeah, at least in some small way. Ali, Rafa, thank you so much for that reporting. Appreciate it. When we come back, a major moment for college sports tonight. Players getting paid, but not for what they do on the field. We'll explain next. Plus, how dozens of firefighters in L.A. got a horse out of a sinkhole. EA Sports wants college football players to get in the game, the video game, that is, offering what would be the biggest payout ever to college athletes since the NCAA started letting players get paid by sponsors. Here's how it'll work. EA will give $600 plus a copy of the game, which is worth like $70, to every top-tier college football player. It's like 11,000 athletes. In exchange, those players would give the okay to EA to use their face and name in the game, meaning when you're playing the game, you don't see like a little generic person, you're going to see the actual player. It's a big deal. In fact, it is a watershed moment. EA used to have really popular college sports games, but they got shut down a decade ago after a big antitrust case against the NCAA. So now you've got players, they are psyched. Like, they are hyped, including Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels, who our team spoke with in just the last couple of hours. Listen.
I just remember as a kid being able to, stay up for those late nights on the Xbox 360, playing NCAA. It means a lot to me because I've always wanted to be able to play as myself in the game.
George Solis is live for us in Philly, and now he might be able to when this game comes out, right? Explain the significance of that and how the athletes would actually get paid by EA Sports here. And what we've said is this sort of big deal moment.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. And come to think of it, wouldn't it be cool to have little avatars of ourselves in all kinds of media that we could actually play and just sort of like experience like that virtual life? These players, of course, these guys have to opt in to have that opportunity to do that as part of this big deal here with the NCAA and EA Sports. They're going to get paid annually at $600. They have to opt in. That deadline quickly approaching. It is April 30th, so they need to do it sooner rather than later. That's going to follow them the duration of their career. Even if they change schools, they'll still get that compensation as long as they are on an active roster. What about those that choose not to opt in? As you know, some service academies, Navy, Army, Air Force, well, they, of course, cannot be compensated. So they're going to have like generic avatars. So they'll still be a part of it all, but necessarily their likenesses won't be there. So you'll get paid through an app through this company called Learfield. It's called Compass. Basically, they specialize in the NIL business. And then beyond that, again, it's a big deal because, again, there hasn't been a game like this in more than 11 years because of these lawsuits over players not being compensated. And some might remember the Ed O'Bannon case, former UCLA player who basically took this to court saying, look, I don't want these games to stop necessarily. I just want to make sure that players are fairly compensated. And so that landmark decision, there were some agreements, there were some disagreements. Ultimately, groups settled, and the bottom line is these games stopped being produced up until now. But again, you have 11,000 or so players that will have to be incorporated into these games. So again, not everybody's face is being scanned per se, but a lot of those details that really identify the players, which is again huge, are now part of this upcoming game that is set to be released very soon, Hallie.
So can I just be honest? $600, I'm not saying no to $600. No, but that's decent money. It's not Powerball money. It's not the $33,000 that the NFL Players Union negotiated for NFL players to get when they're in a video game, when they're in a game with EA. To be fair, it's fewer players. EA is worth $38 billion. You know, any sense the players are going to try to push back a little, try to get a little bit more money for themselves? Or are they just going to agree?
You know, I think it's really telling, and we're going to see once that deadline approaches, that April 30th benchmark, how many of these players opt in. But for a lot of these guys, this is bigger than the ball game, right? I mean, this is an opportunity to be part of something that's going to follow them throughout their collegiate career. And keep in mind, for a lot of these guys, $600, yeah, not that big of a deal when you consider some of these players are worth millions of dollars to some of those sponsorships, right? 4.7 million, 2.8, 2.3 million, 1.9. Certainly not a figure to scoff at. But as you mentioned, we spoke with Jalen Daniels, QB for Kansas, who really put it into some pretty good terms what it means for players like this to be a part of this franchise.
I feel like the connection that I have with the game since being a child that's what matters to me most. We're in a new age of college football, and I'm ready to be able to see how it is playing with it.
Yeah, and he will definitely get that opportunity, as you mentioned. And yeah, maybe one day we'll be lucky enough, Hallie, to get some avatars made for us in any kind of game. I'd like to see it.
Well, we would do it for free. George Solis, thank you so much. Appreciate it. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Northeast Bureau, the leader of a New York City suburb has banned trans athletes from competing in sports facilities owned by the county. The order by the Nassau County executive requires sports leagues to designate teams as male, female, or co-ed based on assigned sex at birth. Long Island LGBTQ plus groups quickly condemned this move, calling it discriminatory. Out of our Western Bureau, more than 40 LA firefighters helped rescue a horse after it fell into a sinkhole. The horse, ironically, its name is Lucky. Obviously not lucky in that moment, was just trotting around a backyard when suddenly the earth opened up and swallowed it. Rescuers used a pulley system to lift this 1,200-pound guy to safety. Doing okay, though. Eating some carrots, not bad. And out of our Northeast Bureau, a huge piece of a 19th century wooden ship washed up on a Massachusetts beach more than 100 years after it sank. Look at that. The Ada K. Damon ran aground in 1909 during a storm. It was buried apparently pretty intact in the sand. Locals say that as the sea levels started to rise, as the weather started to change, the wreck started to break apart, which has brought some new discoveries to the surface. Coming up here on the show, people visiting Vegas may have left with more than they came for. Not gifts. We'll tell you what has invaded at least a few popular hotels next. Guests at least 4 Vegas hotels apparently had some bad luck during recent stays when they discovered bed bugs in their rooms. Reports dug up by our affiliate there show state inspectors found bed bugs on multiple occasions up and down the Strip over the last 5 months, turning up at some of the bigger name hotels there, like the Venetian, the Mirage. Maura Barrett is following this one for us. Maura, it's like, let's not overstate the issue here. The hotels are basically saying, hey, this is minimal. It's not like everybody's going home with bed bugs here, but talk us through it.
Well, Hallie, apparently what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay there because bed bugs, as we all know, can travel with you. So the problem is hotels are often sections where bed bugs can be popular because guests are in and out. They're so transient. But if you take a look at this map here, you can see the proximity of some of these hotels, the Encore, the Venetian, the Mirage, and the Excalibur, all right there on the Strip. And this is a place where people come in and out very frequently. The Super Bowl just there, hundreds of thousands of people coming through that city. But the Resorts Association was quick to kind of downplay this. They released a statement saying that this only happened in 4 different rooms over a 5-month period, generated millions of room nights. They showcase that it's extremely rare and an isolated occurrence. Unfortunately, these pests can be transported anywhere unwittingly in luggage and clothing. I think it's important to note, though, when you think about it, you have an issue with a hotel, you often deal with it directly with the hotel. These reports that the Resorts Association is talking about are the reports that got sent over to the local health department. And so there's a chance there could be more, but this is what we know exactly. So it's maybe not an entirely huge deal. I should note, though, in my research for the story, I found that Las Vegas was recently added to the list of cities where bed bugs are concerned. They're number 5 on the list, so not incredibly high. Number 1, I found, is actually right here in Chicago. So as if my skin wasn't already crawling all day doing this story, that was a new bit of research I found. Right behind it is New York and Philadelphia, Hallie.
Lucky you, Maura Barrett. Glad to have you with us on that one. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We got a lot more to get to here on the show, including some stunning news tonight around the health of one big celebrity, Wendy Williams, why her family says they're forced to share her recent diagnosis to clear up what they describe as hurtful rumors. That's next. Coming on the air with the big mystery everybody wants answers to, including the White House. Why did it take so long for tens of thousands of us to be able to make a call or send a text? AT&T says service as of tonight is back online, but no word on what happened. We're live with the questions on accountability and the risk for emergency services after that stunning outage. Also new tonight, dramatic video kicking off the Rust manslaughter trial, showing the seconds right after the shooting death of the movie's cinematographer. Why prosecutors accuse the film's armorer of being sloppy in their opening statements, and what the defense has to say about Alec Baldwin. Then more on that news we broke last hour. The FBI informant accused of lying about the Bidens, rearrested on the same charges. Our team's digging in to find out why. Plus, an NBC News exclusive on the babies of Gaza. We'll show you the terrifying mission to evacuate them from hospitals under attack. Plus, right now, the NASA administrator, in just the last couple of minutes, says it is white knuckle time with potential problems with the U.S. spacecraft set to land on the moon any minute. We're going to get into these issues with the first black woman ever to go to space. That's coming up a little bit later on in the show as we're watching that. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and tonight, major questions about this mystery that probably affected you or somebody you know. How did tens of thousands of people wake up today, not able to make a phone call or send a text, with cell service shut down for tens of thousands of AT&T customers? It's happening all over the country, or it did. Look at some of the cities hit hardest. New York, Atlanta, Chicago, bunch of cities in Texas. You see it on the chart here, the big spikes of outages throughout the day, mostly in the morning, kind of tapered off by about 3 p.m. These are people self-reporting outages, by the way. That's all we can confirm, the self-reports. That probably doesn't capture the whole picture, considering AT&T is the country's biggest service provider. 241 million phones on its network. Millions of people may have lost service, potentially. There is some good news. As of right now, 6 o'clock Eastern, AT&T says they've restored service to everybody. They're saying sorry. They're saying they're taking some steps to make sure this doesn't happen again. But this goes beyond AT&T. T-Mobile and Verizon customers also had problems because they couldn't call people who have AT&T. And there's still no answer to the big question here. How did this happen? Even the White House wants to know.
The bottom line is we don't have all the answers to that. I mean, this just happened earlier today, and so we're working very hard to see if we can get to ground truth of exactly what happened.
Liz Kreutz is covering this one. She is joining us now live from L.A. And Liz, I understand you just finished speaking with one of the top cybersecurity experts in the country, the former CISA head, a guy named Chris Krebs. Talk to us about what he's telling you about the potential answer to this question. How did something this big go this wrong?
Yeah, Hallie, that literally is the question I asked him. Like, people are wondering, how does this happen? And he said, you know, he pointed out we don't know a cause. AT&T has not said anything yet about what led to this. It's not believed to have been a cybersecurity attack, but he admitted that that's the first thing, and that's where his mind went when he first heard about this. He said, big picture, though, it's just a reminder of our reliance on these cell phones, these complex communication systems, this technology, and the vulnerabilities that exist then because of that. Here's what he said.
Think back even just a few years ago, you had other means of going about your day, whether it was a landline or other sorts of communications, as well as, you know, other aspects of your life. But now it seems virtually everything we do is connected to the internet and has some sort of digitization attached to it.
And, you know, he also said this comes really as cell phone companies, Hallie, are phasing out landlines. And really that's driven by consumers that aren't using landlines anymore. But it just shows the need for us to think about alternative modes of communication. And I think what's also interesting is he pointed out the psychological effect of this. He said, what if something like this happened on Election Day and people didn't have their ways of communicating with each other? So there's some broader implications we could definitely think about here, Hallie.
Man, that thought experiment really starts to freak you out pretty quickly. There's also the piece of this that relates to the emergency services, right? To like people who might be in a moment of crisis needing to get in touch with first responders here. That was part of the scramble today, too.
It was. And we saw from a lot of agencies, offices of emergency management agencies, going out and putting out alerts to their communities saying, please don't call 911, because, for instance, in Boston, there was a situation where people started flooding the agency there because they were trying to see if their SOS system works, which should allow you to call 911 even without cell signals. So people were using it to test their phones, and it was flooding their system. And they were saying, with the recent cell phone outages, they were telling people, if you have an emergency and you need assistance, pull one of our 1,200 fireboxes over. This technology has been operational since 1852, so we're resorting to services that are more than 100 years old when we don't have our cell phones. But we heard from a lot of people today that were impacted by this. I was in an Uber this morning, and she was saying, is LA rush hour? And she was showing me her phone, and there were like hardly any requests. And she said, I've never, ever seen this. And her thought is that it might be a lot of people who just couldn't request rides because their phones were out, Hallie.
Liz Kreutz. So at least the service is back on. The answers, though, still elusive. I know we're following this one. Thank you, Liz. Appreciate it. Tonight, we're seeing the dramatic and chaotic moments after a deadly shooting on the set of the movie Rust, with prosecutors playing that in court today. Watch.
Here's the box that I got them out of. Okay, put them right there. Put them right there, okay? Relax.
So in that first clip, you heard the movie's director yelling in pain. He was also shot that day. Afterwards, you saw Hannah Gutierrez-Reed sobbing, trying to tell police what happened. There she is in court. She was the armorer on set and loaded the gun that went off in Alec Baldwin's hand in October of 2021. Events that led to the death of the movie's cinematographer, Helena Hutchins. You see her there. Prosecutors are making the case. They say that it all happened because Gutierrez-Reed was, in their words, unprofessional and sloppy on the job. Here's how they wrapped up their opening statement not too long ago.
This is a statement that Ms. Gutierrez made when she was being interviewed on the day of the shooting. She says at the end, I don't know. I wish I would have checked it more. And so do we.
But Gutierrez-Reed's lawyer says the state is making her a scapegoat, essentially, as she faces charges of involuntary manslaughter and tampering with evidence. She's pleading not guilty. Baldwin is also pleading not guilty to a charge of involuntary manslaughter. He's going to go to trial later on this year. Dana Griffin is joining us now from Santa Fe. So prosecution says Gutierrez-Reed is sloppy. The defense is saying she was actually doing everything she could on set today, that she was overworked, and that she is essentially a scapegoat as the least powerful person who was on that set. Explain some of the cases that each side are making here.
Yeah, essentially, Hallie, the defense is saying that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed had to email her own production manager to say, hey, I need more days as an armorer, because she was working 2 different jobs on this film set. They said that production was cutting costs, and that she even wrote in her email something to the effect of, when I'm not able to focus on those duties, mistakes happen. And obviously the shooting was accidental, but investigators say it was her negligence that led to the death of Helena Hutchins, and she is the one who brought those live rounds onto the set even days prior to. They even showed some images during court showing those live rounds were mixed in with dummy rounds in a styrofoam container, that even some of the cast members' belts had live rounds inserted in them, and also that she even held one in her lap while on set before the latest round of dummy rounds were sent to the set. So that's why they believe she brought those rounds onto the set. Now, the defense says that just because you see, well, let me go back. So part of what the prosecution is laying out here is that dummy rounds have a brass primer. They showed one photo that has a silver one. Well, the defense says not all primers are brass for dummy rounds. So they are hoping to introduce that to try to, poke holes in the prosecution's case.
Yeah.
Hallie?
What do we know about what's to come in this particular trial? We know that Baldwin's trial is set to start later on this year. How long do we think this one will take? Who do we expect to hear from?
So this trial is going to take about 2 weeks. We're going to hear from law enforcement officers, crime scene techs, witnesses, including actors, the director that was also shot on that film set, and they're going to provide a narrative of what it was like working on this production. Now, the defense is going to try to point to a shoddy investigation by investigators to try to poke holes into this case so that they can try to get their client acquitted. But if she is found guilty on all charges, Hallie, she could face up to 3 years in prison.
Dana Griffin live for us there in Santa Fe, following all of it tonight. Dana, lots to follow. Thanks. We got to get to some breaking news now, because the FBI informant charged with lying about the Bidens has just been arrested a second time. Talking about a guy named Alexander Smirnov. And if his name sounds familiar, it's because we just talked about his court appearance in Vegas earlier this week. Tom Winter is joining us now. New statement now from this guy's attorneys. What are they saying about why he's been arrested again? What happened?
That's right, Hallie. And if you see me looking off camera, it's because I'm waiting to see if we're going to get some new information here from federal prosecutors on the record and with the docket. We know that this arrest, according to multiple people who are familiar with the matter, to myself and my colleague, Sarah Fitzpatrick, that the arrest was at 11 a.m. local time. Apparently, according to Mr. Smirnov and his attorneys, they say Smirnov was rearrested on an arrest warrant from the same court that he was planning on voluntarily appearing at when required. He said he was inside the law office at the time of his arrest, preparing his defense, and they're seeking remedies to get him out again. Hallie, the key details are here as to why he was rearrested, and if it's on the same charges and the same indictment, that's highly unusual. So something, and I think we're going to hear about it shortly, something happened here where prosecutors felt the need to go to the court to get him back into handcuffs. But the exact why of that is something that's obviously still very much up in the air.
I don't want to put you in a position where you're saying something to get out over your skis, but I will just ask it this way. One of the things that came up initially was the concern. He was arrested, I think, right as he was about to get on an international flight, is the concern of being a flight risk. I think that his attorneys had said, wait a second, he's got ties to the Vegas area, right? I think a girlfriend in the area. Could that have anything to do with why we're seeing him get rearrested, or is my head in the wrong direction here?
Well, I'll take it a step further. They called him a, quote, serious flight risk. He is on a 24-hour-a-day GPS monitoring. Those are not foolproof. There is, obviously, he lives in Las Vegas. He could walk from his residence to McCarran Airport. It's a situation, and he's also an Israeli citizen, so any appearance at an Israeli embassy, he could get a new passport. He had to surrender his passports. But look, all of this, to your point, Hallie, is right now speculation, because we're still waiting to hear from federal prosecutors as to why this arrest was made. But yes, a whole host of reasons as to why it could be. It is an unusual circumstance the way this went down. It has certainly piqued my interest.
Tom Winter, if it's piquing your interest, it's piquing ours as well. Thank you for bringing it to us tonight. Appreciate it. So listen, in just the last few hours tonight, we're getting a look inside what may have been an emotional meeting between President Biden and the wife and daughter of Alexei Navalny. You're seeing some of these pictures here, released, handed out by the White House, we should note, of the three of them. At one point, you're seeing the president hugging Navalny's widow in a San Francisco hotel room. Navalny, of course, was, up until his sudden death last week, in a Russian penal colony, the top opposition leader fighting Vladimir Putin. Here's what we heard from the president after the meeting.
He was a man of incredible courage, and it's amazing how his wife and daughter are emulating that.
Yulia, the widow of Navalny, saying just a few days ago that she would, in her words, continue the life's work of her husband, fighting against Putin, and try to get to the bottom of his mysterious death. The meeting comes as President Biden gets ready to roll out what the White House calls a new major set of sanctions against Putin and Russia in response to Navalny's death. I want to get to NBC's Mike Memoli, who's traveling with the president in San Francisco. So here we are at this really critical moment here, a couple days away from the sort of commemoration of the second year of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Couple of hours potentially away from the rollout of tough sanctions against Russia for the death of Navalny. And now you have these very sort of public pictures being released by the White House of Navalny's widow hugging President Biden. It feels like a very clear message.
Yeah, it certainly is, Hallie. And it's an important message at this moment, especially when you think about the importance of these anniversaries, right? This is on Saturday, the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Think about how President Biden marked the first anniversary last year with that surprise trip to Ukraine, something that was secret until we saw those striking images of the president walking with President Zelensky through the main square there in Kyiv. What a powerful demonstration of the U.S. support for Ukraine up till that point. The president would talk often about the fact that one of the things he was proudest of as president so far was his ability to keep our allies together to support Ukraine. But where are we now approaching the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine? The president's struggling to get Congress to support that $60 billion in essential support for Ukraine to sustain this effort. And so the White House had been really struggling with how to mark this second anniversary in light of that. The president just wrapping up the fourth fundraiser he's held here on the West Coast, raising his voice, according to the pooler in the room, as he said, "The world looks to us to lead the free world, God darn it," the president was quoted as saying. And what was at stake in this election? And so having this opportunity today to have that emotional meeting with Yulia Navalnaya was important, as the symbolism that has now come together fairly late for the president to be able to tomorrow roll out these aggressive new sanctions targeting Russia's ability to continue to make war against Ukraine, so that the president could go into a meeting that's scheduled on Saturday with the other G7 leaders and talk about what the U.S. is continuing to try to do. But there's no doubt that there are now questions among our allies about the U.S. role in the world heading into this election year is very much on top of mind for the president, as he's especially giving more candid assessments of that SOB, as he called President Putin in a fundraiser last night, of Trump and his support for him. And so it's an important moment for the president to be able to do more to demonstrate the U.S. commitment here, Hallie.
And Mike Memoli, many more threads to pull, right, on the Russia piece of this in the days and in the hours to come. Mem, traveling with the president out west tonight. Thank you. Back east to Wall Street, and big news because the markets seem electrified tonight. Records getting shattered all over the place. Look at this. The Dow passing 39,000 for the first time ever. The S&P closing at a record high. The NASDAQ up almost 3%. What's up with this? Why? What's driving this? The company you see here called NVIDIA. We told you about it last night. They released their earnings after the closing bell. And boy, today we saw those earnings drive a spike in the markets. NVIDIA is a big AI company, and so there is a lot of excitement about the fact that their revenue apparently tripled. That's maybe good news for the markets, but the news for consumers today, a little bit more mixed, because it's now more expensive than ever to carry a balance on your credit card. That's because the interest the companies are charging people is at a record high, leading to $25 billion in revenue for those big credit card companies. Kate Rooney is joining us now. So the credit card companies are making some money. Obviously, people are paying more, right? Is there any regulation on this?
Yeah, so fascinatingly, there is actually not any regulation or cap on the amount that credit card companies can charge, Hallie. But there is something we should talk about called the APR. If you bear with me for a second, we'll nerd out on the annual percentage
Nerd out, but
rate.
in a very I know you're going to do it for us, Kate. If anybody can do it, it's you. So thank you.
Exactly. We'll boil it down. You've seen this before, Hallie. It's the APR. It's what the credit card companies are charging you. It's the yearly cost of borrowing money. That's essentially what a bank or any of these card issuers are going to charge the consumer beyond what they call the prime rate. So it covers their basic cost. Those are really at an all-time high. The average card rate is now about 22.8%. It's essentially double what it was a decade ago. So it's not just the rate, though. The profit margins these credit card companies are making, the amount that they are making on the back end is surging. All of that is according to this new CFPB report. But the reason, this is key, the reason rates are going up across the board is because what the Federal Reserve is doing. Their target interest rate, that has gone up. So the cost of borrowing anything has gone up. Mortgage rates have gone up. The cost of servicing debt for the government has gone up. So it's not a coincidence that credit card rates are also going up, but it really has to do with what the Fed is doing. All of this, though, means record profits of the banks, the card issuers, and credit cards as a business are a lot more profitable for banks than other type of loans. So good thing for the card companies. But it's fascinating. I was looking into some of the caps on credit cards. I was actually shocked. I thought there was, but there's no cap. And you get these credit card APRs that are above 30%. But there is a bill out there that's looking to put a cap at 18%, which seems kind of reasonable.
If it passes, we'll see. Kate Rooney covering all of it, all things credit card related for us tonight. Kate, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Want to take you now to a live look at NASA TV. This is it. This is the control room. It is mission control as the team is trying to pull off this historic landing on the moon that could happen literally any minute now. Historic because it would be the first U.S. spacecraft to land on the moon in more than 50 years. We haven't seen something like this since the Apollo era in 1972. And here's the thing. It has not been without some drama in the last few minutes. We just heard the NASA administrator, Bill Nelson, warn that right now is white knuckle time because there were some issues, something having to do with lasers and the way that this moon lander figures out where to actually go. Tonight's potential landing on the moon's south pole would be part of a bigger mission to send astronauts there in the next couple years and even set up what would basically be a gas station for rockets to refuel as the U.S. tries to beef up its lunar presence. I want to get to Marissa Parr, who's live for us in Atlanta. And so some sketchy moments. There was some drama. Bill Nelson was like, oh, no, what's happening? It looks like maybe there's some good news. The lasers are working. What's up?
Well, there's always drama when it comes to trying to get either humans or machines to space, Hallie. So I've been on this beat for just long enough to know that expect the unexpected. So just so you know, for your awareness, I am listening simultaneously to what is being said on NASA's live broadcast, the mission control, trying to listen for anything key to report to you as we talk about what we've been hearing over the last hour. So it was just after I left off with you that we heard those comments from NASA's administrator, Bill Nelson, essentially saying, and you mentioned this is a critical time. We are about 3 minutes away from this slotted. This has already changed the time that this lunar lander was supposed to be making its landing. This has changed many times. We're 3 minutes away from this time that it's supposed to land at 6:24. Bill Nelson called it white knuckle time. He said that there was an issue with the flight radar system. So our understanding is the laser in question that helps measure the precise distance from the moon was not working. So they're going to use NASA's onboard system, onboard laser instead. And that is really one of the biggest challenges here because, Hallie, we've talked about how they're landing on a part of the moon that is untapped, that has not been landed on before. There's so many levels to this that are historic. But quickly, as we're entering the around
we're 90 seconds away.
From when we're supposed to see, we're getting close here. But I want to mention the south pole of the moon is the part that has not been explored before. This is a part that has icy waters that could provide rocket fuel. You mentioned a gas station of sorts. So it would allow them to refuel, if you will, on the moon. And I'm listening really quickly because I just want to make sure everything is on track here, Hallie.
Well,
but
let's
the
listen
lunar
in for a second, Marissa.
on the south pole is totally different. Okay, sounds good.
Let me see if we can listen in if our control room can take this full live because we're now within just about a minute now from landing, a minute 20 seconds. So as Marissa was saying, this is
like a pitch over.
this is it. Are things going to go okay or not? I want to listen in just for a second here.
Let's confirms pitch over. This starts the HDA process. That's hazard detection avoidance. Throughout this show, you've heard Gary and I talking about the problem that was attempted to be solved in lunar orbit, making the decision to not only postpone this show.
NDL indicates altitude at 1,000 meters.
1,000 meters call out from NDL. That is coming from flight management. This is a system right now. NDL was not intended to be the primary landing system on this. Instead, we're using 2 laser beams from NDL and feeding that into that hazard detection and avoidance system that you see on your screen right now, with the lander making autonomous decisions about where it wants to land. That is generally
less than 1 minute remaining to touchdown.
Less than 1 minute remaining for touchdown.
And again, that's the time of touchdown. It may take some time to actually confirm the status of the lander.
And in this process, we do have a deployment of Eagle Cam attempting to take the third-person images of Nova C going down to the lunar surface. We are inside of 1 minute, Gary.
So you have been listening here to the Mission Control Center, essentially, of NASA, looking to make history here by putting the first American spacecraft on the moon since the Apollo era in the 1970s. We are within just about 30 seconds from this thing making landing. Now, what you're seeing here on screen, this is a simulation. This is obviously the big picture on the left. That is obviously not the real deal. The pictures will come back to us a little bit later. They're going to take a minute to confirm that this actually has landed, especially after all those issues with some of the laser systems used to get this lander on the moon's surface. Let's listen back in because we're super close.
As you heard it from the mission director, Dr. Tim Crane.
A moment of silence here as they're waiting to try to confirm that this lander has actually made it onto the surface of the moon.
And 1 minute has elapsed from the notes that we have, Gary, of that original burn starting at PDI.
And you have carrier lock.
That's MD asking if we are getting the ground stations locked on to Nova C. That carrier lock call, Gary, we expect that to come from GroundNet or COM. That conversation possibly not happening on our public channel that we have access to. We're just standing by to hear that come through the channels as we approach almost 2 minutes since we estimated the landing time. We did get a few call outs on the side, folks coming into the room saying there was about a 2-minute forgiveness in our timetables.
We are checking our antenna reception.
Checking antenna reception.
So here's what this all means, that in the course of the last maybe 90 seconds or so, there was this window where they expected this lander to hit the surface of the moon. Remember, the essentially south pole of the moon, and what would be this historic moment for NASA and for the U.S. space program, essentially, as we're in the midst of this kind of space race with China right now. This mission critical to the missions that are set to come in the years to come. So the deal now, they got to make sure that this thing has actually made it onto the surface of the moon. Didn't crash, didn't have an issue. They don't know that for sure yet, right? They think that between 6:24 Eastern, as we're watching now, and 6:26, 6:27, the time that it is right now, this thing has made it, but they've got to confirm it. Marissa Parra is watching this for us, watching this with us, I should say, as it's happening. Marissa, you said it yourself. It is always dramatic when any person or piece of machinery lands on the moon. Let's listen.
And that's the mission director, Gary. These are our notes here of what we believed. We talked about the COM outages with the lander making autonomous decisions. This is the process of going through the last bit of data that came into Nova Control and working to verify, okay, this is the last bit of data. Where was the lander possibly going? How do we look for it and establish those communications? Nova C uses 4 antennas placed at the top of the lander that are designed to capture these communications. But we did expect this. We talked about it, that this is a communications challenge in and of itself, and right now we're standing by to hear that communications call out.
We're just a little more than 3 minutes from the time of the when the clock reads 0 for Nova C landing on the moon.
I think Marissa is with us now. And Marissa, as we are waiting for that essentially confirmation of this historic moment, there is some tension, right? There is some drama here as they're looking to make sure, especially after some of those technical issues, that this lander has made it to where it's intended to go.
Always some drama, Hallie, and I think it's worth reminding everyone who hasn't been following this. This comes about a month after another company, a different company, attempted a lunar landing and was unsuccessful. It was a crash and burn back here on Earth. And so there's a lot of eyes, a lot of people. I've just been checking Twitter, and a lot of people who are tuning in to see the fate of Odysseus, rooting for Odysseus, waiting to see if we're going to hear confirmation that this was successful. And so it's worth reminding everyone, one of the many challenges here as we're waiting to hear from Mission Control, and I'm listening really quickly. They're staying on this. That's what they're saying. The challenge here is that they're landing on a part of the moon that they have not before, that we haven't explored before. This is the South Pole. They have lots of craters that have icy waters. And those craters are probably also a key part of this because it's so important to have really precise distance measurement from the surface of the moon. You got to be able to make sure that that vehicle is landing in an upright position on an even surface. Those icy waters are a big part of what they're trying to explore and tap into specifically, Hallie. That is why they're exploring the South Pole. But it's different from the equator, and it does pose a lot of challenges. And so that's one of the things that I think has a lot of people holding their breath right now, because we've known just how tricky this was going to be. Bill Nelson said it earlier. We heard him calling this critical time, a white knuckle moment. And so it wouldn't be the first time that it was unsuccessful. But I think, of course, a lot of hopes riding on this, because this is the closest we have seen a private company. Again, we don't have confirmation on whether they made it successfully or not, but this is the closest anyone has come at the moment.
Well, they are talking about possible communications challenges here, right? So it's been about 5 minutes since they think this lander made it to the surface of the moon. The comms issues becoming a problem here. We're going to keep an eye on this. Marissa Parr, I'm going to ask you to stand by. Continue to listen in. We're going to come back to this the second we have any news, but we're going to try to sneak in a super quick break. On the other side, more from NASA and more from Indonesia, too, after a tornado ripped apart parts of that country. We'll be right back. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, gymnast Gabby Douglas. Remember when she came on our show and announced she was going to try to get back into the Olympics, start competing? Turns out she cannot compete this weekend in Kentucky because she tested positive for COVID, which is such a bummer, because this is it, the moment when Gabby Douglas made her comeback official with us right here on NBC News Now. She hadn't competed for 8 years. This was a huge deal for her this weekend. In that Instagram post we just showed you, Douglas says, "I'm crushed, but I'll see you guys soon." Her hopes, our hopes, they're staying alive tonight. Go, Gabby. Get well soon. Number 2, Yale is bringing back its standardized testing requirement for new applicants. It's interesting because it's a 180. They used to have a test optional policy up until really this year. It was related to COVID initially. It was in place. Now, Yale is going to make students, applicants, give them test scores starting in the fall of 2025. They are going to broaden out which kinds of tests. The school says that's the best predictor of a student's academic performance. Dartmouth just made a similar move. Number 3, Major League Soccer is kicking off this season with replacement refs after some protests. The pro referee organization locked out union employees, basically a denial of employment, after the 2 groups didn't come to a contract agreement. The whole thing also means the league is going to delay putting in place the new rules it planned on adding this season. The MLS commissioner says the league is prepared to deal with the lockout. Number 4, Guinness World Records has officially stripped Bobby of his title as the world's oldest dog. The pup from Portugal was reported to be 31 years old when he died in October, 31 in people years. But a bunch of vets said they were skeptical about that. Some other experts said they found no conclusive evidence to prove Bobby's real age. But obviously he is still a world record owner in his owner's hearts. Number 5, some exciting news in the panda world. China set to send 1 male and 1 female panda to the San Diego Zoo this year in kind of this panda diplomacy moment. This is just a few months after the pandas at the National Zoo here in Washington were sent back to China. Officials said the pandas could come as early as the end of summer. Some may end up back in D.C. at the National Zoo as well. Who doesn't love looking at a little pandemonium there? Coming up, we're going to check back in on that expected moon landing any minute. Plus, wildfires flaring up again in Australia. The new warnings as crews race to get them under control. That's just ahead in the global. But first, life under attack inside the mission to evacuate babies from a hospital in Gaza. An in-depth look with our own Aaron McLaughlin coming up. Coming in now, I want to take you back live to NASA headquarters where, look, let's listen in. Oh, silence. We just saw the clapping and the cheering, however. That's the news out of this because Mission Control says they can confirm without a doubt that their equipment is on the moon, which means they may have just made history by putting that
call, Gary, that was something else, a faint signal. Now it's time to work on refining that signal. But Dr. Tim Crane, our mission director today, making the call. Odysseus has a new home.
It shows the disciplines of the flight controllers.
Big smiles from NASA there, you see, as the U.S. is set to basically make history if there is firm and final confirmation, which will come hours from now, that Odysseus has, in fact, that lunar lander made it to the south pole of the moon. A big deal because this is the first U.S. spacecraft to land on the moon in more than 50 years, ever since the Apollo era. Marissa Parra is with us along with, and we're lucky to have her, Dr. Mae Jemison, former astronaut and, of course, the first woman of color to go to space. Marissa, let me quickly start with you, and then Dr. Jemison will get to you. But Marissa, set the scene for us. A big moment for NASA.
Yeah, and it's been a dramatic, actually, it's been just a dramatic day in general following this. But of course, the last 10 or so minutes, I mean, this was supposed to land at 6:24, and there was radio silence essentially coming from Odysseus. And so collectively, everyone has been holding their breath. You heard, though, they confirmed that the equipment is on the surface of the moon. That's what they said. But in terms of the communication, that's the part that is still lacking. And that is the part that they said that they're continuing to reboot the system. They're planning on rebooting the system in order to continue to make contact with this lunar lander. And we'll talk about the historic nature in just a moment, but it's really important to point out it's the location that was a big part and factor in why this was so tricky. The south pole of the moon is a part of the moon that is undiscovered, unexplored. There's these icy waters that scientists, astronauts hope can be used to potentially provide rocket fuel for missions to other parts of our solar system, including Mars. So when we talk about the space race, Hallie, of course we have the space race, we have the race to the moon to bring humans back to the moon. If this is 100% confirmed, this is the first private mission to the moon to have a lunar landing on the moon from, a vehicle landing. But then we also have humans aiming to be back on the moon end of next year. But then, of course, the race to Mars. This would be a huge part. If they can tap into those icy waters, this would be a huge part of that. But, of course, it doesn't come without its challenges. Hallie, remember, just 1 month after a crash and burn, an unsuccessful attempt to do exactly this.
Marissa Parra, thank you so much. Dr. Jemison, to you, we're so glad to have you with us at this major moment for NASA. Talk about what's going through your head, what's going through your mind as you're watching this all unfold, and the cheers and the smiles now from your former colleagues there.
Well, the cheers and the smiles are because they were able to take a number of different technologies and really do some ingenious work with connecting things through and sort of saving the day. And I think what particularly I'm feeling right now is that ability to build upon so much that we've done before is pushing us forward. Now, I know we talk about the race to the moon, the race to Mars, but I think that we should really think of this as humans progressing, that we as a species, as a planet, are leaving our home, but we want to leave it in a way that's sustainable. And I don't mean leaving it in that, we're going away from Earth and we're not coming back, but rather that we're able to expand and we're able to progress. And so those are the things that are going through my mind. But let's be clear, there have been a number of missions to the moon. This is one in a series. What marks this differently is that it's a commercial. It was tabbed as a commercial mission.
And what's also important here, you talk about this being part of a series. there is more to come, right? I mean, there are significant next steps that NASA hopes to take as we, as you so eloquently put it, talk about the way that humans are progressing beyond simply our planet.
Right. And all of those steps are really, for me, they not only have us going further away from our home here on Earth, but at the same time, they give us a better vantage point in which to explore our planet, to see things about the universe, to understand the universe. So I think it's, we really need to put it into a larger context, not just one that, wow, they did this and that's the end of it. But it's a series of things that we're going to be doing, that we're going to be able to evaluate. And even the technology advances that we have now really influence what we can do here on Earth, right? The ingenuity with the communications, all of those things are very beneficial.
Dr. Jemison, we're seeing on the left side of the screen a few pictures of you from not too long ago and your moments of making history. How would you say, in your view, how would you compare the current state of space exploration to when you were sort of actively engaged in this? How do you think about that?
Well, you know what I really almost want to think more about, less than when I was in going into space? We have a progression. So we see that we have more players involved. It's not just the United States and the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, that are having humans in space. We have India has landed landed on the moon. China, there's much more. Japan, there's much more breadth in space exploration now. So that's a part that's particularly interesting to me. But I would even say that I would compare it to growing up when I was in the 1960s. And that is that we have some hope that we can do things that are bigger and better. We also have a lot of discord. And what my hope and desire is that space can help us to see each other more as part of this greater world, and that we can move forward. My fear is that as we talk about commercial exploration, we forget that we have to share the moon, right? Whose birthright is it? Is it just the people who land there, right? Is it just the companies? We really need to figure out a lot of things about what this means to go to other planets, what it means to share what's on this planet. And I think it brings all of those things into focus.
So much for being with us at this critical moment here. We're so grateful to you for joining us. Thank you. And as we had to break, much more to come on the other side, including our original tonight. But first, that key moment when that lunar lander made it. We'll play that for you.
The U.S. has landed on the moon once again.
Overseas now to a new but faint glimmer of hope tonight for some kind of truce in Gaza. Israel now saying it's trying to promote a new outline for a deal. Although keep in mind, international leaders have tried for months to get another ceasefire, a pause in the fighting in exchange for hostages released, but nothing's come of it. We're now learning today a top White House official is in the region to try and shake something loose here. And there's an urgency to it, with Israel holding on to its threat to invade Rafah during Ramadan, just a few weeks away, if Hamas doesn't agree to a hostage deal before then. An invasion of Rafah could threaten more civilian lives in a part of Gaza where desperate people are packed into whatever refugee camps or schools or hospitals they can find. And it's been hospitals under attack in this war, like Al-Shifa. The IDF says Hamas used it as a command center, with the fighting putting some of Gaza's most vulnerable at risk. That includes, you'll remember, these newborn babies evacuated from Al-Shifa in a high-stakes mission in the first weeks of this war. And tonight, our Erin McLaughlin has an in-depth look as part of her new NBC News Digital documentary into the harrowing journeys of these babies, even younger than this war, trying to survive.
كنا في كل لحظة نترقب الأخبار يعني ما فيش أخبار مؤكدة أن الولد عايش ميت.
كنت منقطعة عن الاتصال بابني. هلقيتها أنا لي تقريبا 45 يوم
Baby Anas's parents rushed to Al Emirati Hospital, hoping their son was among the rescued infants. They scanned the list of names, and there he was, Anas. Many of the Al-Shifa babies were suffering from dehydration, sepsis, and hypothermia. With Gaza's healthcare system overwhelmed, it was decided they would go to Egypt for treatment. Warde and Jalal were faced with an impossible choice. Keep baby Anas with them in a war zone, or send him to Egypt where he'd be safer. Because only mothers were allowed to accompany the babies across the border, they chose to stay together.
وقلنا إذا خلص يا بنعيش مع بعض يا بنموت مع بعض وإيش بيجي من ربنا يعني الحمد لله إحنا راضيين.
At this point, they were sheltering at a school in Khan Yunis.
الحمد لله لقينا موجود يعني ما شفناهوش شيء.
Most of the Al-Shifa babies were sent to Egypt for care. Two of those babies are Noor Albana's twin daughters. They were born premature before the war. Now they're Al-Shifa survivors. Noor is a new mom. The baby in the incubator is her daughter, Lean. Noor has never touched her daughter until now.
أول شيء خوف لأن أول مرة ألمسها يعني أول مرة أمسك إيدها أول مرة أمسك وجهها.
Lean's twin sister Leanne is being treated in another part of the hospital. Leanne is strong enough for her mother to hold her.
Did you think this moment would be possible?
صراحة لا ما كنتش متوقعة إنه يكونوا لسه عايشين. لا صرت أبكي عيط يعني.
Noor is the only mother here.
When you see this row of babies without moms, what goes through your mind?
كيف حيتربوا من غير الأم والأبو؟ مين حيربيهم؟ مين حيهتم فيهم؟ إيش الرعاية اللي حياخدوها بعد رجوعهم لغزة؟
Erin McLaughlin is joining us now. Erin, it is such a gut punch to see this and to hear these stories and to think about the parents having to make this unimaginable choice between, you know, separating from their child or leaving them in a war zone here. Can you talk us through now? This is a documentary that you and our team have worked on for, I know, a very long time, part of a bigger series. What's the update for some of these babies?
Yeah, well, it was a harrowing decision for the State family, and it's a decision, the decision to keep Anas in Gaza that Anas's father, Jalal, says he now regrets. It's important to keep in mind at the time, they had been separated from Anas for more than 40 days. They feared that Anas was dead. They had no way to reach the doctors at Al-Shifa Hospital. They had no updates. They were surrounded by rumors. So when they saw Anas's name on that list, it was a rare point of relief and celebration. You saw it there, them reuniting with Anas inside of that encampment in Khan Yunis. But they had no way of knowing what was about to come next. And what came next is they had to relocate to an encampment in Rafah. And now Anas is sick. He's in badly need of a surgery. He suffers from a hernia. He's not sleeping. He's not eating. And now the family has no idea what to do. Hallie.
It's incredibly difficult. Erin, we're glad that you are shining a light on some of those stories. Thank you. I urge folks to look for more of Erin and her team's reporting in the NBC News Digital doc, Babies of Al-Shifa. That is on NBCnews.com. You can scan to watch now. NBC News covers hundreds of other international stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our international teams have done it for you. Here is some of what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Indonesia, officials say more than 30 people have been hurt after a tornado ripped across part of the country. Dozens of buildings damaged. Look, you can see some of the damage here. Officials say storms of this scale are pretty rare. Out of Australia, emergency officials are asking thousands of people to evacuate because of a bushfire burning out of control in the south. About 1,000 firefighters are there already, but they need even more because they think this thing's going to get even bigger. Out of Greece, beekeepers stacking dozens of empty beehives. Look at that in front of the country's parliament today. They're protesting high production costs and competition from imported honey. Farmers have been demonstrating in Athens for weeks now, blocking roads and border crossings as their unions negotiate with the government for some financial relief.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.